This microcredential deals with ignition systems and consists of 5 targeted skills. This targeted skill deals with troubleshooting ignition systems. When troubleshooting an engine that won't start, a technician will usually check the spark first. If it is not the problem, fuel issues will be checked next, and then compression problems. When troubleshooting within one of these areas, follow a step-by-step discovery schedule. A certain condition takes one route of investigative steps, while another issue takes a different route. Troubleshooting should start with the easy items to check, then progress to the more complex issues. Remove the spark plug or plugs first and inspect them for carbon deposits. Clean dirty plugs with a wire brush or replace them. Next, check the spark plug gap. Is it too close, set correctly, or set too far apart? Use a spark plug gauge. The gap should be 0.030 to 0.035 thousandths. Set the gap if it is incorrect. Consult technical publications or a dealer to determine the correct plug for the engine. Install the plug later. By leaving the plug out, it will be easier to turn the engine over in subsequent tests. Check the magneto to see if it is producing a spark. Connect a spark tester to the plug wire and ground the tester to a metallic spot on the engine block. Turn the engine over for several revolutions. Observe to see if a spark jumps across the tester. If there is no spark at the tester, remove the engine cover to further inspect ignition parts. The flywheel key is the next part to evaluate. Remove a nut and washer to be able to access the key and keyways. In solid-state ignition systems, a sheared key will still produce a spark. However, the timing will not be correct and the engine will not start. Remove the flywheel and bad key and replace the key. Clean the magnets on the flywheel while it is removed from the engine. Badly rusted areas can limit the magnetism. Use an emery cloth or pneumatic tool with a pad. Reassemble the flywheel. Check the kill switch. Is it making contact correctly or otherwise operating correctly? The switch in the open position should allow a spark to jump across. When the contacts move around to touch one another, this creates a double ground and kills the engine. Repair or replace any faults with the switch. Inspect the magneto. Check the wire conditions from the coils. Is any of the insulation worn off of the wires? And are there any bare wires touching the block? Bare wires would create a double ground which would kill the spark. Insulate any bare spots on wires. Check for rust on the armature. Sometimes rust can insulate the coil from grounding itself where the armature mounts to the engine. Remove the coil and clean the contact surfaces on the armature and on the engine. After cleaning the magneto, reassemble it to the engine. The refastening process involves setting the air gap. Air gap is the space between the armature and the permanent magnets on the flywheel. Setting the air gap is an important step. Too close and the flywheel could rub on the magneto. If those parts rub against one another, the momentum of the engine will be slowed. Too far away and the permanent magnets may not affect the armature. Both settings of being too close or too far away will not produce a spark. Follow these steps to set the gap. Turn the permanent magnets half turn away from where the magneto would mount onto the block. Mount the magneto to the engine. If the mounting holes through the magneto are slotted, slide the magneto as far away from the flywheel as the slots will allow. If the holes are just circular, there is no allowance for adjustment. Tighten the mounting bolts only slightly. Turn the flywheel around so that the magnets are directly across from the armature. There are different tools available that are designed to set this gap. Place the tool between the magnets and the flywheel. Loosen the coil mounting bolts and let the magnets pull everything together. Tighten the mounting bolts and gently remove the tool. Turn the flywheel around by hand several times to ensure that the heels on the armature are not rubbing against the flywheel. If the parts rub, reset the air gap. One final test is to check the magneto. Some companies will ask the technician to check the primary and secondary coils. Using a multimeter, set the scale for resistance. The black lead from the meter goes to the ground wire. If no wire, fasten the black lead to the armature. Red lead from the meter goes to the primary coil. Check the secondary coil the same way as the primary coil. Black lead stays on the ground wire or armature. Red lead fastens to the secondary wire. If readings are within the company's specifications, the coil is good. If not, replace the magneto. Some technicians will not go this far in the testing process. It depends on the price of a replacement coil. Sometimes it is cheaper to simply replace the coil rather than paying for labor to do all the testing. If working on a solid-state ignition system, troubleshooting efforts would end here. There are no other parts or settings to check. Reassemble all parts, make all adjustments, and test again for spark. Knowing these troubleshooting steps will make the diagnosis process quicker, which will keep the customer happy and the technician more efficient.